Good morning. Welcome to the First Parish in Framingham. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation, and we are a welcoming congregation, which means no matter who you love, how you move around in the world, your race, your age, your gender identity, your gender, your beliefs, no matter where you are on life's journey, yes, you are welcome here. I'm Deb Dubourdieu. I use she, her pronouns. I sing in the choir, and I'm on the Long Range Planning Committee. Today, I am your worship associate. Please be sure to read the announcements in the order of service, and also be sure to put your phones and other devices that might make noise to their quietest setting. While beeps and buzzes can be distracting, we welcome your human noises, your cooing, laughter, and especially your singing. Please join us after the service for coffee and conversation in Scott Hall, which is across the courtyard. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. It takes a lot of courage to try out a new religious community. We look forward to getting to know you better. If this is the religious community that you call your own, welcome home. And now, let us release all that we need to let go of in order to be more fully present to yourself, to one another, and perhaps to the sacred in this time and place. We will now light our chalice. I share these words for our chalice lighting, which were written by Summer El-Baite. In betwixt and between, we move in the liminal spaces that show shades of what can become, what can be. We light this chalice as a symbol of courage to move into that time of this and that, and not this and not that, with patience and with faith and love and hope that this time will pass, like the sun that moves in between rising and setting, reminding us that beauty resounds in betwixt and between. Let us now rise in body or in spirit to sing our opening hymn, number 176 in your gray hymnal, 168, One More Step. Please remain standing as you are and sing and say our words of affirmation.
Through every land, by every
Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve all life with compassion, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. This is our great covenant, one with another and with our God.
You may be seated. This is the time in our service that we set aside for sharing the things which weigh deepest on our hearts. You can submit your joys or sorrows online or write them in the book that is at the back of our sanctuary. And in between the sharing, we will sing Comfort Me, so that our sorrows and joys may be held in song. This morning, there are no sorrows shared. So we light a candle for all of those sorrows which remain too great to share. Let us now sing Comfort Me. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, O my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, O my soul. And these are the joys. Ellen Cormier shares this joy, the blessings of how First Parish friends have supported me and attended the beautiful service for Charlie. Friends are treasures. Cherish them. I do. Kevin Stern shares this joy. They voted early on Wednesday at the Natick Library and greatly enjoyed Marianne Orlando's art on display before going home with a nice book. Donna Nelson shares this joy. If anyone is interested in a cutting from the coulis plant on the front table here, it is gorgeous. Thank you, Donna. So if you're interested in bringing some of that beauty home, please see Donna Nelson during coffee hour. And Dave Doucette shares this joy about e-biking 5.25 miles to church, enjoying the foliage, the smell of cider donuts while passing Hanson Farms and experiencing a crisp fall morning. Beautiful, beautiful. So let us now sing the second verse. It is Sing With Me. Sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. And we light one final candle for all of the things which weigh heaviest on our hearts, but which remain unspoken. Let us now sing, Speak for Me. We now turn our attention to our heartbeats, to our breath in and our breath out. We turn our attention to that which is supporting us, to the ground beneath us. As we set aside this time for contemplation, meditation, and prayer. O Spirit known by many names and no name at all, but who calls us each by our true first name, which is beloved, we give thanks for this day, for the air turning a little crisper, for the beautiful leaves, golden, red, and orange that are falling. We give thanks for those in our community who share their talents, whether in artwork or green thumbs. We give thanks for the support of our community. May we never take it for granted. For those who are mourning or ill or in need of healing, those who are lonely, may we share our love. May we be love's hands out in the world. And this world, oh, today, it is so beautiful. But we don't have to look very far to see the brokenness, to see inequality, to know of all of the war-torn parts in our world. We are strong. Let us work to bend the arc of the universe towards justice. And we are strong, but we are also an anxious people. There is such turmoil and division in our world. May we find ways to calm ourselves, to return to this beloved community, to build connection beyond our walls. I say these words and do all things for love's sake. Now we will sit for a minute of quiet. Your only job right now is to do absolutely nothing. You can sit in quiet. You can pray silently, or you might listen. May this silence and quiet be something that we can return to when we need it the most as our week continues on.
Victoria Weinstein writes, "Every week in our church, we take up an offering. It's good to remind ourselves from time to time that the offering is symbolic as well as practical. We know that it is through pledges that we build our budget and fund our yearly program and ministries of worship and religious education, pay our staff and professional religious leaders, and finance the comfort and beauty of our buildings. And we know that we could easily submit those pledge checks to the church at any convenient time. But we pass the plate during our worship service to make a community expression of thanks for the blessing of abundance, to visibly bring in the harvest at this most cherished hour of our week. Our offering says that the act of giving is as essential to our spiritual well-being as anything else we do here on Sunday mornings. The morning offering will now be given and received in the spirit of grateful fellowship.
Our reading today requires your participation as well. Let us turn to responsive reading 657 in the back of the gray hymnal. 657. If this side right here will read with me what is in the regular type, and this side over here read along with Deb what is in italic type, that will be lovely. These words are by Unitarian Universalist religious educator Sophia Lyon-Foz. So this side. Some beliefs are like walled gardens. They encourage exclusiveness and the feeling of being especially privileged.
Other beliefs are expansive and lead the way into wider and deeper sympathies.
Some beliefs are like shadows, clouding children's days with fears of unknown calamities.
Other beliefs are like sunshine, blessing children with the warmth of happiness.
Some beliefs are divisive, separating the saved from the unsaved, friends from enemies.
Other beliefs are bonds in a world community where sincere differences unify the pattern.
Some beliefs are like blinders, shutting out the power to choose one's own direction.
Other beliefs are like gateways, opening wide vistas for exploration.
Some beliefs weaken a person's selfhood. They blight the growth of resourcefulness.
Other beliefs nurture self-confidence and enrich the feeling of personal worth.
Some beliefs are rigid, like the body of death, impotent in a changing world.
Other beliefs are pliable, like a young sapling, ever growing with the upward thrust of life.
Here ends our reading. Well, those are pretty serious words. Where do we go from there? Well, we grow, we change, and we transform. My way of interacting with the world is very different now than from when I was a child, and thank goodness for that. It is the same in other parts of my life. I have learned and I have grown. I was raised, as some of you know, in no religious tradition whatsoever, and now I am the exact opposite of that. I am very much a part of a religious tradition, in case you could not tell. In my connection to a faith tradition, I have changed. I have told the story of my call to ministry and my journey towards Unitarian Universalism many times. I have a 15-page religious autobiography that none of you will likely ever read. Not because it isn't published, but because that's personal. This comes with the territory, and I am so grateful. The path of ministerial formation is a very intense path, a very intense path of spiritual formation. But this work of forming is work for all of us to do, I believe. We are each forming in different ways, and because you are here, I imagine that somehow you want to develop into a deeper, better, perhaps, version of Unitarian Universalism. But what does that label mean? How will others know? The question then becomes, if there were a trial to convict you of the crime of being Unitarian Universalist, which that is not a crime yet, perhaps, would there be enough evidence to convict you of that crime? how do we deepen our spiritual lives, our religious identity? There was a faith development theorist of the 20th century. His name was James Fowler. And he spent a lot of time coming up with stages of faith development. He developed these in conversation with many of the human development theorists of the day who were his contemporaries, Piaget, Erikson, and Kohlberg, and we will not get into their work today. We will discuss what Fowler had to say. What we discussed in Introduction to Religious Education in seminary was that perhaps his phases of faith development were true to a point, like any person that sets out to create different stages of human development. They're true to a point, but they do not tell the full story. They had limitations. I remember the professor of that class saying that this study was only conducted initially on middle-class, Protestant, white men returning from World War II. So we start out, those are the limitations of this theory. But it is a starting point. Fowler said that we all begin at stage 0, a pre-stage called the primal undifferentiated faith. Of this stage, he writes, people in this stage acquire experiences from the outside environment that either instill in them a feeling of trust and assurance from being comforted or living in a secure and stable environment, and an experiencing of a sense of constancy and care from parents. These personalized experiences, Fowler said, essentially translate into feelings of trust and assurance in the universe and in harmony with the divine. Then Fowler says that we move into the intuitive projective faith. This normally begins around ages 3 to 7. Fowler believed that faith at this stage is experiential and develops through encounters with stories, images, and the influence of others, a deeper intuitive sense of what is right and wrong, and innocent perceptions of how God causes the universe to function. At this phase, we say that faith is caught. It's what we catch from our parents and our family's religious practice. Then there was the mythic literal faith, which usually begins around ages 7 to 12. Fowler said that at this stage, children have a belief in justice and fairness in religious matters and a sense of reciprocity in the workings of the universe. That is, doing good will result in a good thing happening, and doing bad will cause a bad thing to happen. And an anthropomorphic image of God, like a white man with a long beard who lives in the clouds, religious metaphors are often taken literally, thus leading to misunderstandings. Sometimes this is when parents fret that their children don't want to go to church. It's age appropriate. I will say that about any faith. It's age appropriate to decide this is not for me. We are at this phase, we say that faith is taught. We are learning for ourselves the basics of our faith tradition or a different faith tradition. From the ages of 12 to 18, we enter into the synthetic conventional faith. This phase is characterized, unlike previous stages, Fowler said, people at this stage can think abstractly. What were once simple, unrelated stories and rituals can now be seen as a more cohesive narrative about values and morals. With abstract thinking comes the ability to see layers of meaning in the stories, rituals, and symbols of the faith. At this stage, people start to have the ability to see things from another's perspective. This means that they can also imagine what others think about them and their faith. There are some people that never leave this phase. We say that the synthetic conventional faith is where faith is bought. That is, we either have buy-in to a faith tradition or we opt out of it. From the ages of 18 to 22, Fowler said people normally enter the individuative reflective faith. If you think back to your late teens and early 20s, which all of you are past that time, yes, all of you are. Those of you who have been there remember that this was a time of dissonance. You start to question your own assumptions about your faith. How many of you spent this time trying to make sense of the faith tradition of your parents, only to leave it? That's what happens in this phase. Those who develop a greater sense of maturity around their faith usually reject some parts of their faith while embracing others. This is maturity here. This is where we say that faith is something that is sought. We seek out faith to help us make sense of the world, or we seek out the answers to our big life questions. And if we don't get the answers that we like, we start to seek them out elsewhere. 2 more stages. Stage 5 is the conductive faith. Those who enter this phase, and I say those who enter it, this is not where everybody ends up when they die. People who enter this stage usually don't get there until their early 30s. Unitarian Universalists Beth Dana and Jesse Jager say, this stage is when the struggles and the questioning of our stage 4 faith give way to a more comfortable place. Some answers have been found, and the person at this stage is comfortable knowing that all of the answers might not easily be found. In this stage, the strong need for individual self-reflection gives way to a sense of the importance of community in faith development. And then we finally get to stage 6. When I was taught about these stages in seminary, they said that people rarely get to stage 6. This was reserved for people like Thich Nhat Hanh, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Archbishop Desmond Tutu. This is the universalizing faith stage. Fowler said that people in this phase have a, quote, special grace that makes them seem more lucid, more simple, and yet somehow more fully human than the rest of us. So don't worry, for most of us there is no quiz on these stages of faith development. And you do not need to figure out where you are on this continuum in between the time of the end of this sermon and when you greet me outside in the receiving line. What's probably more accurate is that instead of a continuum that implies a progression, it's perhaps a spiral instead, this spiral of faith development. Also important to remember that these stages of faith development can be experienced in any faith tradition. In order to grow, you may in fact stay in the faith tradition that you were raised in. We must resist this notion that people of other faith traditions are somehow stunted in their growth. Yes, a progression through the phases of faith development may involve converting to another faith. But frankly, I think the process of moving from one faith tradition to another or converting from one denomination to the other, that may be unusual. A person of the Catholic or the Protestant, the Jewish, the Muslim, the Hindu faith may spend their entire lives wrestling with their faith and never leave, which that is also beautiful. There's a story that is so frequent I couldn't find the citation for it, where a person of no faith or one faith or perhaps our faith is having lunch with an Episcopal priest friend. We do have those from time to time, and they are wonderful and to be treasured. And the clergy person of our faith tradition says to their Episcopal priest friend, you know, it must be nice having those creeds. It is so easy. You know exactly what you believe. And the priest friend stops eating their sandwich and stares at their UU minister friend and says something along the lines of, You think we don't wrestle with those creeds? Of course we do. While we might be the station at the end of the line for some on their faith journey, we also might be the layover as well. There are a number of you here who were born into this faith tradition. I think I count 4 of you at least here that were born Unitarian Universalist. And I feel certain, friends, that your experience of the faith is different than when you were born into this faith. It is different than when you were a teenager. Dean is nodding his head for those who cannot see. Tom, do you agree as well? Where's Tom? Okay. Of course it's different. Of course our experience of faith is different. Our understanding of Unitarian Universalism shifts. I want to return back to that concept of faith being caught, taught, bought, or sought. A very convenient rhyme. Though as Lauren and I were planning for this service, we got the order wrong every time we recited it. So it's caught, taught, bought, and sought. There is a 5th rhyme here, a 5th rhyming word, and it does not map neatly onto Fowler's faith stages. UU religious educator Joy Barry says that the 5th stage is a wrought faith. She describes it this way: it is a deliberate, lifelong, shared shaping of faith that just might be necessary for full faith development. This wrought faith happens in worship, in class, or in congregational life, but often it is missing in our churches. The creation of a wrought faith requires collaborative work, and it requires that it is worked. The image where I found the information for the wrought faith has a, an anvil. It has an anvil that the faith is worked on. It is created with others, and this wrought faith is tested. A slight diversion for a second. I served 2 congregations that were founded during the fellowship movement of our faith tradition. Briefly speaking, the fellowship movement was a church planting effort in our denomination that started about 1945 and lasted until 1960. And in the fellowship movement, they would go to university towns mainly, and they would advertise there in the newspaper saying, "Are you a Unitarian Universalist and you don't know it yet?" These university towns were mostly in the South and in the Midwest. And they took advantage of the fact that more people were going back to school, were starting to go to school, with both the baby boom and also men going to college as a result of funding from the GI Bill. One of the keys during this movement was that when they would start these fellowships, after they established the bylaws and the programming for the next 3 months, they would also start religious education programs immediately, sometimes even hiring directors of religious education before they hired ministers. That's why religious education is so important. It is important to start teaching what our faith is about, because it is through faith, through a religious tradition, that we make meaning of the world. This quest for human wholeness and meaning-making, which I believe is the ultimate human storyline, is filled with dusks and dawns. It is filled with daylight and midnight. Our day will always be spent wrestling with how to make sense of the laughter and how to get through the tears. One thing that we might get worried about is the ebb and flow of our relationship to a religion, or we want to go deeper into different parts of our religious tradition. A certain hymn may speak to us until it doesn't. A poem may be unknown to us, and then we hear it for the first time. And years later, we have imprinted on our minds something about the time in our lives when we first heard that poem. If you believe in God or use some other definition for the mystery beyond all understanding, throughout our lives, we may feel closer to that sense of the sacred and further away. We may go years or months without feeling a connection to something greater than ourselves. And then, just when we least expect it, we feel that connectedness again. This ebb and this flow is not a bad thing. It is so natural to have the volume and the magnitude of our relationship to a faith tradition change over time. Your religious practice may shift as well. You may prefer to go to worship services such as ours, or a meditation group, or find your sense of the connection to something greater than ourselves on a walk. Ultimately, the central question that Unitarian religious educator Sophia Lyon-Fawes asked was, how do we move away from teaching what a faith tradition is to how do we use our faith as a tool to make meaning of the world? So as I approach the end of this sermon and this month of thinking about transformation as a shared religious value, I have to wonder if speaking about faith development as a spectrum is the right way to think about it at all. Growing spiritually and ethically is more than learning about what the religions of the world teach. It is about maturing spiritually. Sure, we might have to first learn theological reflection or spiritual reflection, which in short involves making sense of the events of our life and exploring them from a spiritual perspective, but that's a sermon for a different time. I think back to when I was completing clinical pastoral education, which is our hospital chaplaincy internship, which all ministers are required to do. I did a 400-hour unit at Mass General and another one at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. As part of that internship, we learned how to do spiritual assessments with the patients that we met. And they were usually pretty quick, but they helped us figure out the resources that we needed to provide the patients that we were working with. I'm sure if we were wiser, we would have used them more and in more depth, but we too were in formation. So what if instead of a commitment to growing spiritually and ethically, what if that is more than teaching the skills of reflection? It is about teaching spiritual assessment skills. We will forever be on different paths in our quest to grow spiritually. What is next for you on this journey? Where do you want to grow? Maybe the better path forward is thinking about the dimensions of spirituality and figuring out the things which are most important to us, rather than figuring out the things that we don't believe in when it comes to religion. So as I said, we are closing this month of talking about transformation and figuring out specifically what does it mean that we say we are a faith tradition with a shared value of transformation, and a definition that says we adapt to the changing world and we covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. We say that openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and our Universalist heritages, never complete and never perfect. My friends gathered here, what is next for us as we embark on this journey as a faith tradition committed to transformation? We don't really know. Article 2, where this new shared value lives, is just 4 months old today. So let us find new paths and new ways to grow spiritually and ethically. This is the work of faith communities such as ours. Thank goodness for that. May this quest be awe-filled and wonder-filled. And may we do this work together. May it be so, and amen. So we have talked about a new way and a new way of being together. Let us now rise in body or spirit to sing hymn 1017, Building a New Way.
We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. We are working to be free, hate and greed and jealousy. We are working to be free. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. Our every need. Start with love, that is the seed. We can feed our every need. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without peace, this world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry.
So as we leave this friendly place, let us take the light of love out into the world and use it to brighten our pathways. And when we need to rest or recharge, be challenged or affirmed, may that light guide us. May we hold the light always, and the light hold us always. Amen. And go in peace.